Coaching through modern media. Lesson 1. Introduction. The conceptual frame of this lecture.
Welcome to the lecture Coaching through Modern Media. I'm Harald Geisler. I'm professor for further education at Helmut Schmidt University in Hamburg, Germany. My favorite subject in research and teaching is coaching. I'm doing this reflecting my many years of experience as coaching practitioner. On this basis, I developed and established in 2006 an internet platform called virtualcoaching.net. In these days, I was a pretty lonely pioneer in this new field. But now things are changing. More and more coaches are becoming open to use the modern communication technologies for their coaching services. And more entrepreneurs invest their money to develop new internet platforms to be used for distant coaching services. So I think now it's time to have a lecture about coaching through modern media, or shortly e-coaching, to give a broad overview and some in-depth insights into this interesting new field of practice. As you can see on the slide in the background, this lecture is part of a bigger project. This bigger project consists of 4 parts, and this lecture, the first one. Its goal is to deliver structured and systematic knowledge about coaching through modern media for your coaching practice. And as I said, it's knowledge transfer and not action learning. If you want to use this knowledge in your coaching practice, you must undergo a training, a special training, and that will be the second part of this bigger project. My university is also offering a certificate of e-coaching. If you want to get this certificate, you must take the task to reflect the learning experiences of the second step systematically. And when I say systematically, I mean you must reflect it with regard to this lecture, that is, to the different concepts and to the whole line of arguments which will be presented in this lecture. And on this basis, you can do the final exam. That's an interview, a video interview of about 1 hour. This conceptual frame has had some consequences for the development of this lecture. As you can see on the slide in the background, we have developed and we are going on to develop this lecture in close cooperation with e-coaching practitioners, coaches and clients, and e-coaching researchers, as well as institutions which have developed e-coaching platforms and or are offering e-coaching education programs. These different connections make this lecture to be integrated into a multidimensional network, respectively community of practice. This community was established in 2013 on the internet platform LinkedIn as a group called e-coaching. Currently, this group counts about 1,000 participants. And now, let's immerse into the details of today's lesson. Our lecture consists of 4 parts. The first 4 lessons will provide an introduction. The following 7 lessons will give an overview and insight on different modern communication media that may be used for coaching purposes. Those media will be called basic media. In addition to these basic media, there are specific problem-solving tools. They will be presented and reflected in the third part of this lecture. And in the end of the lecture, there is a lesson on e-coaching marketing. After these preliminary explanations, let us have a look on the content presented in these lessons, the line of arguments developed by them step by step.
In Lesson 2, the line of arguments starts with presenting the assessments of a series of e-coaching experts. Concretely, we ask them how they assess the current situation of e-coaching and its future. In these interviews, we discovered a broad consent that e-coaching is seen to be a growing field of practice. But there are not only drivers which open the doors into a bright future, but there are also some barriers that must be overcome. One of these barriers is the lack of conceptual grounding. Up to the present day, there is no clear concept to answer these questions, which are the specific features we must have in mind if we want to define e-coaching, and how is e-coaching structured into specific segments and aspects. This lack of conceptual grounding gives reasons to focus this lecture on conceptual elements and to develop a grounded theory for e-coaching. When looking for drivers which can open the doors for a bright e-coaching future, it is wise to first look at the whole picture and the conceptual frame which we must have in mind when thinking about e-coaching. If we do so, we should start with the fact that we are living in a globalized information society with an increasing need of learning faster, learning more flexible, and of learning more self-directed. Altogether, this creates a coaching demand which is determined by an increased cost and time effectiveness, by an increased process and needs flexibility, and by an increased market transparency. That's the conceptual frame set in Lesson 2. On this basis, we ask and discuss in Lesson 3 these questions. What are coaching media? And what are traditional and what are modern coaching media? Our answer to these questions are: in coaching, there are two elementary types of media: coaching basic media and coaching problem-solving tools. The coaching basic media are standalone media. The latter are proposals for add-on media built on the former, or are integrated into the basic media. If we look closer at the coaching basic media, we can recognize that there are in total 9 different basic media. The first one is traditional face-to-face communication. It is followed by video dialogue via Skype or WebEx because this communication modality has the most similarities with the face-to-face dialogue. Video communication could be performed also asynchronously by video mailing. This means the communicating partners create video recordings and send them to each other via internet. Thereby, the client can answer the coach's questions asked in the coach's last video mail, or the client could perform an exercise which was proposed by the coach. The next communication modality is the phone dialogue. It's most popular in coaching practice, and of course, there's also an asynchronous version. The communicating partners electronically record a spoken text and send them to each other via email or another internet application. A further modern basic media is synchronous text chat. The asynchronous version would be emailing. And finally, coach and client can communicate as avatars, voice-based or chat-based. This will be further illustrated with an example in the third lesson. All these coaching basic media will be presented and discussed in the second part of our lecture in detail. In the third part of our lecture, we will focus on problem-solving tools. They can be clustered into 4 segments. First, there are text-based problem-solving tools, and second, 2D visual problem-solving tools, which use, for example, 2D images, depictions and signs and symbols to offer special support for the problem-solving process in coaching. The third segment is dedicated to 3D static visual problem-solving tools. With these tools, we enter the fascinating virtual 3D world in the first step. This first step is determined by the feature that it is a static world, or a world without visual actions. So, the fourth segment of problem-solving tools, which we will present in the third part of our lecture, refers to 3D dynamic visual problem-solving tools. With these tools, we enter the dynamic world of avatars. The conceptual basics developed in Lesson 3 will help us to reconstruct the history and current structure of e-coaching practice in Lesson 4. If we want to discuss the history of e-coaching practice, we must first see that there are 2 different approaches related to 2 different points of view. The first point of view is to focus on the coaching modern basic media and to take for granted to see the telephone as a modern communication medium. If we take this viewpoint, the history of e-coaching practice starts with the invention and popularization of the telephone. The other, more convincing one, is to focus on the modern problem-solving tools which are developed to be used for coaching purposes. If we take this point of view, the history of e-coaching practice began in 2006, when the coaching platform Virtual Coaching became open for public. If we have a look on the short history of e-coaching practice from this point of view, we realize that it is not easy to compare the different coaching platforms with each other, because they are based on different conceptual grounds. These are the different traditions of psychotherapy, the different concepts of training and action learning, the different modern e-learning concepts, and the different practices and concepts of virtual games. With regard to these four conceptual grounds or sources, we can profile each e-coaching platform. For instance, with regards to virtual coaching, we can see that this coaching platform is mainly based on specific training and action learning concepts, but that there are also some connections to specific psychotherapy concepts. In contrast to that, the tradition of e-learning is only a small but not totally irrelevant conceptual point of reference. Virtual games, however, have absolutely no relevance for this platform. We can compare this profile with others, which may be quite different, such as the ProReal profile.
On the basis of these definitions, considerations and explanations, we will be able to start the second part of this lecture. It is focusing on the coaching basic media. The first lesson of the second part gives an introduction and overview about these basic media. One of the essential features of all coaching basic media is that they are composed of specific components. Furthermore, we will see that some basic media use all 5 available components, while others use 1 or 2 only. The first and most important component, which all coaching basic media are based on, is the linguistic speech. It is with words and sentences we can speak or write. The second component is a paralinguistic behavior. It is, for example, the sound of our voice and the way we emphasize important words in our sentences. The third component refers to the nonverbal body expressions. It is, for instance, our facial expressions or gestures. The fourth component is the personal appearance of the coach and client. It is, for example, his or her way of dressing or haircut, but also his or her age or skin color. The fifth component, finally, is the coaching context. It is, for instance, the coach or client's office or the garden or nature walk as context where the coaching process takes place. These 5 components, which coaching basic media are based on, use our human communication channels differently. It is they appear as visual, auditory, and or tactile phenomena. To give an example, linguistic speech can auditory appear as spoken words or as written text visually. If we take a closer look on the appearance of the just mentioned media components, we can recognize that visually presented media components can appear 3D or 2D. For example, in face-to-face coaching, the coach and the client can see each other 3D visually. But in email coaching, the text, which coach and the client send to each other, can be realized in 2D only. These two examples lead to a next important conceptual feature of coaching basic media. It refers to the production and delivery of the coaching basic media. This is important because they can be produced or generated electronically or not electronically. It is traditionally. and they can be delivered to the receiver also electronically or traditionally. In the slide, you can see that this is marked by the abbreviation EL for electronically and NEL for non-electronically. To give you an example, the coach's voice in phone coaching is produced non-electronically and delivered to the receiver electronically. And the text which a coach is writing on his computer is produced electronically, and it is delivered to the client per email also electronically. After this introduction and overview on the basic media components and their appearance, we focus in Lesson 6 on the first of these components. It's the linguistic speech. This media component is most important for all 9 communication modalities we have mentioned just beforehand. In Lesson 6, you will learn in detail that linguistic speech has a certain structure and that it is essential for coaching through modern media to get some basic knowledge about this structure. The most important insight is that coaching processes basically consist of speech acts, and that each speech act consists of 2 parts, the illocutionary part and the propositional part. The latter refers to the client's real-life challenges, and the first serves to manage the relation between the coach, the client, and the coaching issues. To give you a simple example, imagine the coach says, "Dear client, I would like to know what you think to be the most important reason for your problem." This sentence is an example of a speech act. Its propositional part is the linguistically reference to the reason which the client sees to be most important for his problem. And the illocutionary part of this speech act is that the coach asks the client a question, and that this question defines the actual relation between the coach, the client, and the coaching issues. Based on this knowledge, Lesson 7 will focus on face-to-face communication, synchronous and asynchronous video communication. These 3 coaching modalities use all 5 media components: linguistic speech, paralinguistic behavior, nonverbal body expressions, personal appearance, and the coaching context. After having in detail explained in Lesson 6 the basic structure of linguistic speech, we will focus in Lesson 7 on the other 4 media components. The most important of these are the nonverbal body expressions, and in particular the mutual eye contact. This media element is unique for face-to-face coaching. So, in the next lessons, we must carefully consider the lack of mutual eye contact in the coaching modalities that use modern media. That is why most people think that the lack of mutual eye contact causes some serious disadvantages, and that therefore coaching through modern media can only be seen as a second-best solution. We don't agree with this opinion. The central function of mutual eye contact is to manage and control the interpersonal relation and interaction, an important function. But at the same time, we must recognize that mutual eye contact also distracts very much, and we think too much attention and energy from what is or should be essential in coaching processes, the client's coaching issues. So we see a specific difference between coaching and psychotherapy. In psychotherapy, mutual eye contact is essential, because it is a medium to make the client feel personally deeply accepted. And for many clients, this experience is important because it had some healing effects on him or her. In contrast to psychotherapy, coaching is a setting for people without serious mental disorders. It is for people who are well and fit enough to focus all their attention and mental energy onto their coaching issues. So we say, by and large in coaching, mutual eye contact is in some sense dysfunctional or even detrimental. To underpin this statement, we will in the next lessons try to find out e-coaching specific alternatives to substitute the function to manage and control the coach-client relation and interaction.
After having discussed the specific features of face-to-face coaching and video coaching, synchronous and asynchronous video coaching, we will, in Lesson 8, reflect audio coaching, meaning phone coaching and coaching through voicemailing. This lesson is equally important to Lesson 7, because most problem-solving tools, which will be presented in the next part of our lecture, build on synchronous video or phone coaching. Therefore, we reflect thoroughly in Lesson 8 all the advantages and disadvantages of audio coaching and carefully check how the latter can be compensated adequately. On this basis, we finally identify a set of qualifications which seem to be essential for every coach who wants to offer phone-based coaching services. The issue of Lesson 9 and 10 is synchronous and asynchronous text communication. As already mentioned above, this basic medium relies on only one out of the 5 available media components, because it is only based on the linguistic speech. Even if we have heard in Lesson 6 that linguistic speech is most important for all coaching modalities, we must concede that text communication is suffering from the total lack of visual communication data. On the other hand, we must also acknowledge that text communication helps to overcome one of the most important weaknesses of face-to-face and video communication, the weakness of being based on ephemeral spoken words. In the next part of our lecture, we will show that this advantage is the reason why text communication is so important for problem-solving tools built on phone or video communication. The last lesson of the second part is finally dedicated to avatar communication, voice-based and text-based. The essential feature of this communication modality is that the coach and the client use an internet platform by which a 3D virtual world can be accessed. In other words, in artificially created coaching context. In this virtual world, the coach and the client choose an avatar. In other words, an artificially created human-like figure for their own presentation. Meaning, their personal appearance is created electronically. Avatars can be moved in this virtual world deliberately. Meaning, the coach or the client can make them walking, running, and even flying. And finally, there is a limited offer for non-verbal body expressions. Even if the development of this technology is in its infancy, we should seriously take this approach into account, because it opens radically new options for further development of coaching through modern media. The third part of this lecture is referring to the coaching problem-solving tools. As mentioned earlier, we can cluster them into 4 groups: text-based problem-solving tools, 2D visual problem-solving tools, 3D static visual problem-solving tools, and 3D dynamic visual problem-solving tools, which can also be called avatar tools. If we want to capture and analyze these tools properly, we must extend the 5 media component concept which we have developed and used in the second part of the lecture in relation to the coaching basic media. That means, firstly, that we must extend our original 5 media components concept by 3 other media components: signs and symbols, depictions, and images. And secondly, we must create specific subcomponents to adapt the media components to the special features of the different coaching problem-solving tools. This is especially true for the non-verbal body expressions. This extension is being unfolded in 6 steps, respectively in 6 lessons. The first refers to problem-solving tools which offer technical features to freely document phone and video coaching processes in the coaching process. By the means of those problem-solving tools, the clients and coaches can write a coaching protocol during the coaching process containing all relevant information. Even if this option is offered as well to clients as to coaches, I recommend strongly that this function should be used mainly by the client. That is because we must assume that the client will experience his writing process as a productive interruption of the coaching process. I know that for many coaches this sounds pretty strange at first, but this position is related to the insight that the process of writing gives the client room for self-reflection and that this self-reflection has genuine features of self-coaching. The next two lessons refer to pre-prepared optional and obligatory coaching questions. Even if they can be used differently, I recommend to use them as add-on tools to enrich a free documentation of phone or video coaching processes. The basic idea of pre-prepared optional and obligatory coaching questions is to offer support for solving the task to give the coaching process and its protocol a good structure. Pre-prepared optional coaching questions, in contrast to pre-prepared obligatory coaching questions, are a special service to the coach and not to the client. This means the coach gets a set of professional coaching questions, which only the coach can see, but not the client. The coach can select the question that seems to be adequate in a particular situation, and the coach has the option to use or not to use this set of questions. In contrast to that, pre-prepared obligatory coaching questions are a service to both the coach and the client, because both the coach and the client can see them on the screens. So, the structuring effects on the coaching process are different and much stronger compared to the effects caused by pre-prepared optional coaching questions. The next lesson refers to 2D visual problem-solving tools. Even if they can be used differently, we strongly recommend to use them as add-on tools, because it makes sense that they build on tools to freely document phone or video coachings, and on tools which offer pre-prepared optional or obligatory coaching questions. In Lesson 15, you will learn in detail that 2D visual problem-solving tools can be composed of the 6 media components, respectively subcomponents you can see on this slide. Using our media component matrix, this is the resulting presentation. This presentation is helpful when proceeding to the next two lessons. They focus on 3D static and dynamic visual problem-solving tools. The latter can also be called avatar tools. Also, with regard to these tools, we must state, respectively concede, that they can be used differently. But again, there are convincing arguments to use them as add-on tools, to enrich problem-solving tools which offer techniques to freely document phone or video coachings, as well as tools which offer pre-prepared optional or obligatory coaching questions. If we again use our media component matrix, 3D static visual problem-solving tools can be represented in this way, and 3D dynamic visual problem-solving tools, which we can also call avatar tools, this way.
The fourth part of our lecture finally is referring to e-coaching marketing. The most important questions related to this are: who are the most important customers for you? Which particular needs of them are you focusing on and are you promising to meet? And what are the particular features of your e-coaching services allowing to convince your customers that their needs are met adequately? After this overview on the content of this lecture, in the upcoming lessons, it is now time to introduce our team. We will do it in alphabetic order of the last names and without any further comment, because we think that the slides which will follow will give you enough information. After we have presented our team, now let us have a look at our partners who supported the development of this lecture. Again, the following presentation will be in alphabetic order of the last names and without any further comment.